was eliminated in Pakistan, the question asked was not why target a terrorist on foreign soil. No one asked that question. The question was, why was a terrorist given shelter at all? The same question must be asked today. There was no immunity for bin Laden, and there can be no immunity for Hamas. And in facing terror, history shows that members of this council have done the very same. From 2014 to 2022, France struck terrorists in Mali, Chad, Burkina Faso, and Mauritania. In 2014 and 2015, the United Kingdom carried out airstrikes in Iraq and Syria against ISIS. So I ask, if these actions were justified then, why is Israel singled out now? Why are claims concerning sovereignty invoked only against Israel and ignored when others act to defend themselves? Is Israeli blood worthless? The question to ask is not why Israel targets the masterminds of terror, but why they are sheltered abroad, while hostages starve in captivity and Gazans are left to suffer. Israel's fight is not only Israel's. It is a fight of all who believe in democracy against those who worship death and violence, light against darkness, civilization against barbarism, justice against terror. We will continue until the hostages are free, until our people are safe, and until terror can no longer find sanctuary in any corner of the world, because there is no, and there never will be, immunity for terrorists. Thank you, Mr. President.
Israel also chose to refer to an unrelated incident and make misleading remarks regarding Pakistan in an effort to justify its own illegal actions and violations of international law. Pakistan's position on that incident has been clearly stated and is publicly available. The international community is well aware of Pakistan's frontline role and sacrifices in the international community's fight against terrorism. The entire world, including our partners, acknowledge that Al-Qaeda was largely decimated due to Pakistan's counterterrorism efforts. And we remain committed in this global, collective endeavor. We cannot accept insinuations from an irresponsible rogue state that is, in fact, the perpetrator of worst kind of state terrorism that we are witnessing in Gaza and, in fact, in the occupied Palestinian territories for decades. And we reject any false analogy, as has also been done by Qatar. For whatever way it interprets the statements in this council, the occupying power must go back and read carefully the statement issued by the Security Council today. And let me read it out loud here. A statement that normally should have been stronger, but nevertheless it has been unanimously adopted by the Council. The members of the Security Council expressed their condemnation of the recent strikes in Doha, the territory of a key mediator, on 9 September. They expressed deep regret at the loss of civilian life. Council members underscored the importance of de-escalation and expressed their solidarity with Qatar. They underlined their support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar in line with the principles of the UN Charter. Council members recalled their support for the vital role that Qatar continues to play in mediation efforts in the region and alongside Egypt and the United States. Council members underscored that releasing the hostages, including those killed by Hamas, and ending the war and suffering in Gaza must remain our priority. In this regard, they reiterated the importance of the ongoing diplomatic efforts of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, and called for the parties to seize the opportunity for peace. That is why we are here this afternoon in this council. I thank you.
Distinguished colleague from Pakistan wanted to read the statement. He could have done it at the beginning of the session. But I want to refer to your words. You know, maybe you got offended from the word of my speech, and I apologize for that. But I make sure that in my speech I stick to the facts. And the fact is that Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan, and no one condemned the US. And when other countries in this council attack terrorists, no one condemns them. And that is the issue of double standards. When you apply different standards on Israel, then the standard you apply on yourselves, that is the problem of this institution. So yes, you cannot change the fact that 9/11 happened, and today we mark this day. You cannot change the fact that Osama bin Laden was in Pakistan and he was killed on your territory. But I would ask you, when you criticize us, and I'm sure it will continue in the future, think about the issue of double standards, which standards you apply to your country and which standards you apply to Israel. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, we have heard a lot about international law from the world's worst violators of international law. It's time to challenge the perpetrators. And so we ask Qatar, if you don't want targeted bombings against terrorists in your capital, why do you harbor terrorists in your capital? Terrorists who are still holding hostages, torturing them, and rejecting peace deals. Why did you host Hania, Mashal, and Al-Khaya in luxury hotels from where they planned their terror? Why did you back Hamas's Gaza coup in 2007? Why have you funneled billions since then, fueling their terror machine, empowering their 5 wars against Israel? Why did you blame Israel for October 7th, absolving Hamas of massacring 1,200 Israelis, Americans, and others? Why is your state-owned Al Jazeera serving as the terror group's non-stop propaganda arm? Why do you act as a mediator by day and a terror sponsor by night? Mr. President, the record shows Qatar is a state sponsor of terror. The Gulf states said so in 2017 when they suspended ties with Qatar. Now, yesterday, Antonio Guterres and French President Macron condemned Israel. But when the US killed bin Laden in Pakistan, the UN chief at the time celebrated that, quote, justice has been done to such a mastermind of international terrorism. France called it a victory for all democracies. We ask both, how is this different? Now, when Israel captured the Nazi Adolf Eichmann, rescued the hostages at Entebbe, and destroyed Saddam's nuclear reactor, the UN condemned Israel. Each time...
Sorry, I have a point of order. Sorry, a delegation of Pakistan. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we believe in constructive engagement with the civil society organizations and value their inputs, we urge you to ensure that no speaker violates the principles and purposes of the UN Charter and the territorial integrity of sovereign member states. We reject casting unfounded accusations and allegations. This August forum should not be allowed to be misused, especially by those who doctor videos, who doctor narratives, and now doctor facts. I thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, I would like to invite all of us to respect the tone that is commensurate with the important responsibility of this Council. I also remind everybody that points of order are on procedural issues, not on substantive issues. I give the floor back to United Nations Watch for 4 seconds.
And Pakistan is another state sponsor of terror, so we thank their contribution.
Je donne la parole à Action for Development.
Mr. Vice President, there's a delegation which claims to be the world's largest democracy and brands itself as Vishv Guru, which is global teacher or the so-called leader of the world. India is anything but that. Let us see what this teacher teaches us. This global teacher illegally occupies a UN-recognized disputed territory, disregards UNSC resolutions, and shamelessly perpetuates its occupation of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It violates every human right of the Kashmiris who are forced to live under its illegal occupation, carries out perpetual demographic engineering projects, and perpetrates collective punishment. While constructing a political edifice on communal, ethnic hatred and polarization, it not only threatens the enjoyment of human rights of its minorities, but assassinates dissidents extraterritorially in other sovereign states. India's perennial evasion of accountability for its crimes must come to an end. Mr. Vice President, India indeed is a global leader and global teacher when it comes to supporting, fueling, funding cross-border state-sponsored terrorism, while all the time it pretends to be a victim. While the list of crimes committed by this rogue state can go on, I wish to underline that the pain and suffering inflicted by its terror sponsorship has continually violated human rights of our people. Mr. Vice President, after launching unprovoked and unjustified cross-border attacks on civilians in Pakistan, India, in a deliberate act of incitement, blatantly weaponized water and gloated about threatening the well-being of 240 million people. Perhaps this is the ancient wisdom that the world's self-proclaimed teacher and leader aims to teach us.
We are compelled, once again, to address provocations from a country whose own leadership recently likened it to a dump truck, perhaps an inadvertently apt metaphor for a state that continues to deposit recycled falsehoods and stale propaganda before this distinguished council. Pakistan's systematic abuse of this forum, coupled with its routine manipulation of the OIC as its mouthpiece, has become a familiar pattern. Its pathological fixation on India appears to provide it with existential validation. Yet, we must respond, lest we forget. Lest we forget the carnage of Pahalgam, where Pakistan-sponsored terrorists turned a meadow of joy into a killing field in April this year. Lest we forget 9/11, as the world marks its anniversary tomorrow, even as we witness today the hypocrisy of those who sheltered its mastermind and glorified him as a martyr. Lest we forget Pulwama, Uri, Pathankot, Mumbai. The list is endless, Mr. President. Yet, Pakistan demonstrates the audacity to take the floor today, feigning moral outrage while continuing to finance and shelter the very networks that threaten global security. The international community recognizes this charade for what it is. The world will not forget. India will not forget. Our measured and proportionate response to the Pahalgam attack made that sufficiently clear. We need no lessons from a terror sponsor, no sermons from a persecutor of minorities, no advice from a state that has squandered its own credibility. Mr. President, India will continue to protect its citizens with unwavering resolve. We will defend our sovereignty without compromise. And we will continue to expose time and again the elaborate deception of a failed state whose survival depends upon trafficking in terror and tragedy. Mr. President, we would also like to respond to the surprising, shallow, and ill-informed remarks made by Switzerland.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.